G'day, guys, and welcome back to your English Aussie. Today, we're going to go through some team observations based off what we've seen of the players over this game week and some player picks and analysis for game week 11. As you guys requested, we're going to show a tactical analysis at the beginning in the team observations section and then a statistical breakdown for the player analysis that we'll go through with the stats after that. So first off, we'll crack on straight away with these team observations and running through some of the key games in this game week. Firstly, starting with Liverpool Brighton. Obviously, this week, my team specifically, I chose to captain Salah and get rid of Haaland from the team, which ended up being a great result. And as you can see, my rank jumped up to 670k. The Liverpool game was really a game of two halves or three thirds even. Brighton started really well. They pressed super high, really aggressively. Herschler came out before the game and said how he was going to play. He said he's not going to be afraid of Liverpool. He's not going to be afraid of these teams, and they're going to play their own style of football, which Brighton have been incredible this year. They have a really high attacking um, press, which Liverpool used to have under Klopp, really, which they've not quite got going as well under Slot this year. And they caused Liverpool a lot of problems in the first 30 minutes of that game, playing out from the back. You can see that they're a little bit less comfortable without Alisson in goal. Kelleher's not quite as good with his feet playing out from the back. And that actually means that Van Dijk sort of pulls in a little bit more central and tries to pick up the ball off him instead. The centre back spread not quite as wide for Liverpool, and the Brighton press just suffocated them, and they were really struggling to get the ball out from the back. I thought Brighton were fantastic. Again, Herschler got his team playing some incredible attacking patterns. They passed the ball around really well, and attacking wise, they're a fantastic team. Obviously, if you can break that press, I think that does cause them problems. And Liverpool in the second half changed things around a little bit. I think towards the end of the first half, they started managing to keep the ball better. Occasionally broke the press a few more times. I think obviously Brighton tired because they put so much energy into that press over the first 30 minutes, which really we're so used to seeing Liverpool do over the years. So they maybe knew that was coming, managed to almost fend off that press for the first 30 minutes and then got themselves into the game. Um, yeah, obviously a fantastic goal from Brighton. Otherwise, Liverpool did defend pretty well. I thought Brighton were just very good going forwards. And then in the second half, Salah obviously scored that fantastic goal. Gakpo with a little bit of luck for his. I think what we're seeing this year, differently to previous years, and as we've spoken about a bit on this channel so far, is Liverpool have been much better defensively under Slot. You'll even see Salah tracking back and defending and putting his shift in, and that is probably one of the reasons why he's been less. I'd say not effective, but when we go into the statistical stuff later, you'll see that like his expected goals and expected assists are slightly lower than they have been in previous years. However, his finishing has been far more clinical than it is in previous years. So there's a bit of a counter. I mean, previously he used to get a ton of chances and he'd score every three of them. It really would. I'd be counting three chances until he scored. This year he's just been incredible, like playing really well in incredible form. And that's the sort of discussion you have around FPL, a lot of form versus fixtures versus sort of the tactical setups, and Salah's just beating all those odds at the moment. I would say if you are looking just on stats or just on eye test, um, I'd almost say I'd probably not go with him. I just think he's been so clinical that despite not getting as many chances, he's probably a pain in the butt for everybody watching, wanting him not to score because he just somehow manages to get returns all the time. So yeah, I just thought that was a really interesting point from Liverpool there. Again, Trent my view is he's really just not playing again like the way Slot set up defensively, not getting up and down as much, not getting into those attacking areas, not as a creative threat as he was previously. For me, if I had him in my team, Hard to say. I think he would be a sell because his price is so high. I do think the Liverpool defense is really good, and if you're looking for um, someone in that Liverpool defense, I just don't think he justifies the price, um, even despite his sort of XGXA, which I think is a bit overstated from some of the chances earlier in the season that he created. Um, for Jota and some of the other players. I think, yeah, I think it's 7 mil. Like Trent's just almost a little bit too much. I think if you like, I do like the Liverpool defence, and if you do want to go into the Liverpool defence, I do see Kanate as quite um, a nice price point. He is at 5.3 million at the moment, probably going to continue rising over the next few game weeks. But if you're looking for those sort of set and forget defenders, where you want to play around with the midfield, which I think is a good choice, I think Kanate is probably the one for Liverpool that I'd look to bring in. And we'll go on to speak about the other fullback in Robbo and Tsimikas later in the piece. But yeah, I think that's what I saw out of that Liverpool Brighton game from watching the game. Wolves v Crystal Palace. I've been a bit standoffish, I know, in past weeks on a lot of the Wolves players, um, but I did watch this game and I thought Cunha played really well and just was a real crucial role in a lot of the Wolves attacks. Um, actually, someone that I saw previously in some of the Wolves games that I thought was great as well was Mario Lemina. I thought his physicality in the midfield was great. He set a lot of the plays going, and then you've got Cunha in between the lines that was really picking up the ball, driving them forwards, and causing problems. Obviously, with Strand Larsen as your main out and out forward finisher, who did manage to get on the score sheet. So the Wolves forward pairing, FPL forward pairing, in Cunha and Strand Larsen, assist and a goal, obviously paid off. Look, I'm not. I did think he played really well, and I can see that he's probably the main guy in that Wolves offense. And I'd now probably say if I had the funds, I'd probably go towards Cunha over Strand Larsen. Um, I'm not 100% sure yet that Wolves are going to be able to consistently keep scoring goals against teams. They have a great fixture run, and so that's why I would say I'd definitely look into the forwards, and I'd definitely consider them. But I just don't know whether they're going to be capable of continuously scoring. But we'll see. We'll see. They proved me wrong this week. I thought they offensively look good. Palace not so good at the back. The defence, on the other hand, looked really shaky. It just doesn't look like they're ever going to be able to keep any clean sheets. Conceding two to Palace, who've really not been good going forwards this year at all. The defensive line has not been great, and that's often because the fullbacks are flying forwards. They're not quite getting back and into the right positions a lot of the time. But that does offset by the fact that the fullbacks are up there with some of the highest attacking expected goals and assists this season. And obviously, Ait Nuri has already popped up with 3 goals and 2 assists so far this season. So yeah, I think Wolves interesting options. I would say I'd be more sold on a Ait Nuri Semedo at that cheap price point on a um, defensive perspective than I am on their attackers at the moment. I think there are some other cheap or mid-price attackers that are, for me at the moment, slightly better options, but that could change over the next few weeks. So yeah, moving on to a couple of other games. Tottenham v Aston Villa. Tottenham v Aston Villa was just a crazy game, really. Thought Villa started pretty well. They started on the front foot. They quietened down the crowd at Spurs. Obviously, Rodgers got his goal, which was a result for a lot of Rodgers owners for the tap in from 5 yards. But again, Rodgers just he really does carry the ball fantastically well up the field for Villa. Thought Watkins didn't have a great game. I've been really high on Watkins for a while. I think has been the focal point of that Villa attack, and everything's trying to go towards him. Just felt like he's not quite in his best form at the moment, and with Duran on the sidelines looking like he's ready to go, I just wonder like how much rotation there's going to be. I think at the moment Emery's going Watkins in the league, Duran in the Champions League, and then bringing Duran on off the bench in the league. And they've been playing them both together, which has been good. But yeah, I just do think Watkins looking a little bit out of form. But I think he's a great finisher, like with both feet, with his head. And I'm sure that he will still score goals. So if you do have him as a non-panic, but if you're looking to create some funds for your midfield, I think he's someone that I would look at potentially selling if you have these transfers at the moment. Um, Tottenham, on the other hand, obviously got the win, obviously 4-1. Scoreline maybe a little bit deceiving. I thought they would, like in the second half, and especially towards the end of the game, but I mean, really, most of the second half were the better team. And they were the ones who looked like causing trouble and scoring. And Villa, again, were struggling to play out of their press. Um, the Tottenham and change ups in the second half. He's the only guy in the world that thinks to take Son off and then scores 3 goals and gets the win at 1-1. To be honest, and even in the second half before that, the way he sort of switched Udogie and switched the way that Udogie was um, previously underlapping Son in the first half on the inside, and the two sort of the right mid and Manny Cash, I think it was for Villa, were I think it was John McGinn maybe. And Manny Cash were doubling up on Son, and he wasn't being able to get down the line. And then as soon as Dogie started overlapping like the regular fullback down the outside, then the midfielder had to go with a Dogie on the run, and then that just gave Son that little bit of space to whip that cross in for Johnson for the goal. And I thought, yeah, tactically, you could tell that that was a switch that Ange had thought about at half time, because it was clear that Son was having to keep coming inside, keep coming inside, keep coming inside, and they were then just shunting everyone towards him, and there just wasn't that much creative threat. Once they made that change, they just managed to get a lot more balls into the box and be a lot more creative down the flanks. Um, Johnson, on the other hand, on the other flank, was getting into the box a little bit more this week than he has done in like the last couple of weeks, but it just felt like he was drifting wide quite a lot. The way Kulusevski's been picking up the ball and getting into those little spaces in the middle, he's sort of like Johnson's sort of been waiting wider a little bit and just not being as involved in the games, despite getting the goal, obviously from just a great cross from Son. But I just feel that if you do have him in your team, he's starting to sort of look like, I don't know, he's not as involved as previously he was before. But again, it's coming from the fact that Spurs are not counter-attacking on a lot of these teams. They're having to play through a block. Um, Solanke getting the goals, I'm sure pleased a lot of Solanke owners. He's probably been causing you some stress lately. I think Solanke's a good striker. I think he's a good finisher. He's a good striker, and it's just based on the game and the system that's in place as to whether uh, you get the goals out of him or you get a bit more playmaking out of him. Or yeah, he's link up play. So um, I'm not as down on Solanke as some of the other people are. I actually think Solanke's a great pick. I think he great player for Spurs. Obviously, the key striker. When Richarlison came on, he came on the wing. I do think that he'll probably play a few more minutes in the middle, which likely will potentially will affect Solanke's minutes. But obviously, we'll see. At the moment, I think he seems to be coming on to just give Son a little bit of a break in some of these games. Son obviously wasn't happy when he went off in that Tottenham game. You could see from his face. And just a little bit of course for Son for some people who are thinking to captain him in 11, whether he'll come out of the team or come off early in game week 11 against Ipswich, which obviously is the big game of the week for Tottenham and for non-Haaland owners who potentially are looking to captain elsewhere. Man United Chelsea was actually surprising for me. I thought United played a lot better than I thought they would. Perhaps it's just the fact that Ten Hag's gone and they're playing a little bit more freely. And yeah, I mean the new manager. I know this was under Rude and not Amorim, but the new manager bounce might be looking to affect them over the upcoming weeks. Chelsea, on the other hand, again, like I thought, mostly played well. Were unlucky, probably to just come away with one. But again, United were probably unlucky just to come away with one. So, I mean, game could have definitely had more goals. I thought it was really like a midfield battle. And I thought Caicedo and Lavia were amazing there because Caicedo, especially, who just showed, I mean, he was like a more physical N'Golo Kante. I mean, that's very high praise because I think very highly of N'Golo Kante. But yeah, I just thought Caicedo was incredible. He was breaking up all the play. He was dominating United physically in the middle. He was starting passes. He was hitting crossfield 40-yard balls. He was linking up with Palmer. Um, yeah, I thought he had an amazing game. Not great for FPL points, but him and Lavia seem to have a really good understanding in that midfield. I think that's really positive for Chelsea going forwards, not just offensively, but also defensively. If they can sort of work on their back four and getting a little bit more consistency in the players that are playing there and how the system they want to play, I think those two in central midfield with Palmer sitting in front of them is going to be something very good when Chelsea find the right the right rotations and the right team that they want to get at the back and on the wings and up. Well, I mean, Nicholas Jackson's been doing great up front. Palmer back again playing pretty centrally, got a bonus point, was really involved in the game. Say probably a little bit, maybe not unlucky to get a return, but like was so heavily involved in the game and was a lot of Chelsea's offensive movement. Just probably made a couple of, unlike him, like wrong last passing decisions or shooting decisions. Um, and then yeah, just talk about Amorim coming in for United. So that's been confirmed. Amorim's coming in as United manager from next week. He plays a 3-4-3 system for Sporting with wing uh, with like high flying wing backs, which is ultimately like a 3-2-5 when you're in attack, and then like maybe like four, like almost like a 4-5-1 in defence with the wingers coming back. Um, One thing I think, so obviously, like I think that will be great for United's fullbacks like Delo and Basrawi. I think they could really profit from that in terms of their attacking returns. And I think United's defence has been good so far this season, and they've obviously got some incredible fixtures coming up in the next three. I think they've got all like bottom half of the table, like good sides that you'd want to play. I think it's Leicester, Ipswich, and Everton. The only thing for me, I was actually listening to, I think it was Phil Jones talk about this. Obviously, implementing a new defensive system and like midway through the system is really difficult for the defenders. And switching up from what they play now to a different system, then being able to effectively space your defenders, like how much gaps they should leave in between them for the runners, how close up they should be to the midfield, how far back do they want to drop, making sure they're in line and playing offside lines. When you've got a whole new system that you're trying to play, that's actually really difficult to switch up mid-season. Could that affect their like good defense so far this season? Potentially. So I think it will be interesting to see what he comes in and what sort of team shape and formation that he plays. I also think like it'll be interesting to see how he fits Fernandes into that formation. I think obviously you've got to have Bruno Fernandes in the team. As much as he likes to whine at the referees, he's technically an amazing player and is Man United's creative spark for most of the things that go forward. But fitting him into a lineup with like two in the center of midfield is just not easy. Like he's not somebody who's going to be getting back, breaking up play, being an excellent defender. So it'll be really interesting to see how Amorim sets up for Man United when he comes into the side. I think that will be really key and seeing how they go on. Moving on to some of the other games. So Bournemouth, Man City. Obviously, Bournemouth breaking the Man City 30-odd game undefeated streak. I thought Bournemouth played great. Like took it more to Man City than other teams, but also like managed to get back and defend really well against them. I thought Kirkes at fullback for Bournemouth was really winging up and down that wing, winging up and down that wing. I thought he was really interesting. I haven't seen much of him in the past, to be honest. I haven't watched huge amounts of Bournemouth play, um, but I do find that the way they press and defend when they're at home, and they seem to just play a little bit better at home on the smaller pitches than when they go away to some of the bigger pitches and bigger grounds in the Premier League. Um, they find it a little bit more difficult to defend as effectively. Um, Same things for Man City as we've been saying previously, like how teams play against Haaland and man mark him. No De Bruyne, meaning they've just been less effective going forward, less precise with their passing, less cutting edges. Teams defending in that low block against them, they found it difficult. Um, and then again, similar points again, Guardiola getting the goal for City. So him and Lewis and their attacking potential are just good value um, for their price points. I know Guardiola's been going up and up and up, but I think like get him in. Like he would be my first choice defender at the moment. If I had to pick one defender, it'd be Guardiola. Lewis at that price point for a Man City fullback or centre midfielder who's been pretty much playing every week. I know Walker's back now, and there might be a little bit more rotation, but I think Lewis is at that price point. You know, if he doesn't play, you've hopefully got some rotation options at your bench, and you think that Man City against some of the weaker teams are likely to keep more clean sheets. I would say like if you are looking to only have one of them at the moment, I'd definitely have Guardiola. And if you are concerned about Lewis's minutes over the next few game weeks and you'd rather have someone in that's locked in, I'd look at one of the Wolves defenders of a Semedo or an Ait Nouri to try and help you out there. I do think Man City's next few weeks they probably concede in a lot of those weeks. I don't know if we've spoken yet about Brighton, how they're going to set up against City, but um, like Hertzler's obviously come out and said he's going to play against all these teams, and um, I think Brighton and the way they play will be effective against City, and I think they will score against Man City. But I also think the way that Brighton play and the way they press very high, Man City are going to be very effective against them. And we'll come on to talking about this when we talk about Haaland, because I think it's going to be a very good week for Haaland against Brighton. And I think everybody, including myself, who's come out of Haaland this week, game week 11 is probably the one they were worried about against Brighton, rather than this week against Bournemouth, where I had a feeling that he'd probably not have as much success as he will next week, and there is potential for De Bruyne to be back as well. Um, so yeah, that's what I've got to say about City for now. We will go on to talk a little bit more about Haaland and captaincies, etc. later on, as well as stats. Forest v West Ham, 3-0 win for Forest. Forest were brilliant. Forest really are like just fantastic. Like I just they're just an amazing team. Um, Defensively, their back four unbelievably solid. The way Nuno has them set up, like you've got that physicality in both Murillo and Milenkovic. Murillo reads the game unbelievably well. Like the positional awareness that he has, and to know exactly like when to push up, when to go to intercept the ball, when to try and get in front of his man, how to play offside in the line with Milenkovic, and they work off each other really well. And like I just think they've been a really great centre back pairing. I also watched a couple of interviews with Maria about talking about how he wanted to be one of the best defenders in the Premier League, and like come back and talk to him in a couple of years when he improves even more. And I think he's on his way there. Like he's just a fantastic defender. He's got the whole package really. Fullbacks have been great. Obviously, Moreno and Aina with that thunderbolt off the boot this week. I think he picked up 15 points. Forest defense like really well drilled, like really good back four. Only thing is the fixture's not amazing over the next however many game weeks. But I think from around 17, maybe 18, 19, like their fixtures look so nice. So I'm not opposed to if you want to go into a Forest defence at the moment as a cheap price point over a Wolves defence or over a Rico Lewis. I think they're exceptionally well drilled by Nuno. And then going forwards, obviously West Ham, as we've spoken about, poor in transition in general. Their midfielders slow. They don't track back quickly. They're like Man United of old days, where they just don't. They lose possession and they just really poor and slow in transition. And a lot of teams have clearly caught onto this. And that's the way Nottingham Forest play is they're very fast. They progressively carry the ball. Gibbs White, Hudson-Odoi are really pushing it up the field. Elanga as well. And then that's all culminating in getting that ball into Chris Wood, who has just been in sensational form. His finishing's been amazing. You got to have him. Get him in. Chris Wood, he's the goal scoring machine. He's not Erling Haaland, he's Chris Wood. I really love the way Nottingham Forest play, and I think they've just really been sensational going forward, going forwards and at the back. Like really revelation of a team this year. I think they're in third now in the league. If you're a Nottingham Forest fan, print screen that Premier League. I hope it continues. I really do. I really do hope it continues. But print screen that Premier League. All right. So that's sort of like a tactical view, and like we will probably like continue to incorporate that in what we're talking about. But I know a lot of you guys are interested in sort of the more statistical views as well, and the XG, XA plots, and those sort of, and the fixtures as well, of course, and form going forward. So we'll just have a talk about some of the guys that I like. And probably we've touched on a few already. Here we've got Milenkovic, as I was talking about, from Forest. 0.2, like he's like this is like top 20, I think, or top 30 defenders, non-penalty expected goals and assists. He sort of his stats are sort of heavily influenced by a couple of games where he's had some super big chances. He's not like consistently been having these big chances across the season. However, I just think the Nottingham Forest's defence has been so good that I would have been amiss to not include him in this as a talking point. At 4.5 million, like he's a really good option. I would not turn my nose up about taking him on. Just that fixtures at the moment: Newcastle, Arsenal, Ipswich, Man City, the next four. After that, it does get a lot better for Forest. So he is definitely someone to consider, if not now, later down the line for sure. But yeah, wouldn't turn my nose up about putting him in now. Lewis Hall, who I thought had a really great game against Arsenal. I know we didn't talk much about that game, but Newcastle, like Arsenal, basically didn't have any chances, and it was the way that Havertz sort of dropped in almost to that midfield role, and they just didn't really have anybody as a central striker occupying the Newcastle centre backs. But Lewis Hall really had his work cut out for him against Saka, and he defended exceptionally well. I thought he was great. He also managed to get forwards. He does get forwards and does like they do counter attack well down that side. Newcastle, Joe Linton links up, Willock links up. They're all sort of involved. I thought Hall had an amazing game. I think he got maybe the 3 bonus points as well, or at least got man of the match when I watched the game. Like he's exceptional. Thought he played really well for Newcastle, and obviously like top 10 expected assists for a defender. He's only started 7 games, but he has been starting the last few games now again for Newcastle. I think he's sort of locked down that left back spot for the time being. So Lewis Hall is definitely another cheap price option that I would consider going forwards. Couple of other people that I want to discuss. We talked about Adogi going down that left and that change up of tactics from Ange. And I think that's something he might start to employ going forwards. And not only did that create opportunities for Son to put crosses into the box, but Son also could like cut inside and then or play that ball to an overlapping Udogie, who would then cross the ball into the box. And that gives him a few more opportunities to pick up those assists for Spurs. Unfortunately, Spurs' defense has not been amazing. So out of the people that I've talked about so far, he's probably the guy I'm least highest on. But I think it's somebody that's interesting as maybe as a differential pick that I'm thinking possibly in the future, if Ange continues to employ those tactics, his statistics might pick up even more, and he might be an option going forwards, similar to the way we've seen Pedro Porro. Now, the other one, Diego Dalot. Obviously, we talked about United and Amarin, and I just think that he could be a really good option going forwards. If United get that defence going and he starts playing higher and they're managing to keep those clean sheets in that fixture run against Leicester, Ipswich, and Everton, he could really score a few points over the next few game weeks. So if you're looking for a short-term punt, Diego Dalot for me is someone who's really interesting. A few other people I've obviously highlighted on here. I think we've talked about Aitnuri and Semedo for Wolves. Gabriel is the other one on here that I wanted to just discuss because Arsenal defense has not been fantastic this season. Like, they have conceded goals, but they do have a great fixture run for 12. So if you do have from 12 onwards, so if you do have Gabriel, hold on to him. I think Arsenal's will start to get better once we get to 12 and onwards. Their players are coming back to fitness post international break as well. Hopefully, we'll have Odegaard back. Hopefully they'll have Odegaard back. Calafiori again is big miss. He was playing really well in the defence for Arsenal. So I do think Gabriel, keep him in. I think it will get better for them. Outside of that, Robertson, he's just being rotated with Tsimikas a lot on that left. Slot was saying in his press conferences that it was because Robertson didn't have a full pre-season because obviously he's playing for Scotland, and just like didn't have that time with the squad, hasn't sort of got up to scratch. I think it's maybe a little bit of that, maybe a little bit of also Tsimikas has played much better this season than in the past. I do think Robertson's definitely the best player, but he's just too much of a mixed risk at too high a price to have in your Liverpool team. If you're going to have a fullback, you have Trent, you have to pay that 1 million more. If you're not, I think you have Konate for the price point rather than Van Dijk because you save over, 0.7 plus million, I think it must be, and I'm not sure what Van Dijk is at the moment. But Konate's at 5.3, Van Dijk 6.2, so it's saving 0.9 million. I would go for Konate in that Liverpool back line. And I do think that Liverpool back line is probably at the moment the best for keeping clean sheets, which is crazy to say having seen Liverpool defend over the previous years. But out of that big three teams, I would probably back them at the moment. Moving on into the midfield, obviously some big call outs. I think Salah's now gone up to 12.7. Palmer's also on 11 mil for price. Obviously, these two guys are some of the two big shouts. We've spoken about Salah. We've not quite spoken as much about Palmer. I think that game week 12 is when you want to try and get him in your team for. Leicester is potentially a captaincy option for Cole Palmer, as is, I think, definitely Southampton in game week 14. The 12 is obviously between Salah at Southampton and Palmer at Leicester. At the moment, I'm probably swaying towards Salah just because of the way he's been playing and the form he's in. I think Palmer's probably in a similar vein of form, but I just think Liverpool are a slightly better team than Chelsea, and that sort of leads me to towards Salah for game week 12. But I don't have any issues with Palmer. I could even see there are people that don't have Salah at all, and they might go Haaland, Palmer, Saka, and I actually I think I put out a wildcard draft short video yesterday, and I had a Haaland draft and non-Haaland draft, and the Haaland draft looks better and better as a wildcard draft the more I look at it, and that's without Salah. And that also leads you. I think game week 14 is the one that you're going to worry. Game week 12 against Southampton is the one you're going to worry not having Salah for. But you could cover that with a Cole Palmer captaincy if he goes off. And then you're thinking, you got 13, 14, 15, 16, and Salah goes off to AFCON. Is it worth just going Haaland, Palmer, Saka and not having to make any transfers and those big guys after that? It could be. And if Haaland bags a brace or a hat-trick against Brighton, people are going to be saying that. So, there's decisions to make, and I think there's not a it's different. There are wrong choices, but depending on your team setup, the Haaland draft may be better for you than a Salah draft. The way that my team's set up, I don't have a wild card at the moment. I went for the premium in midfield with Salah, Palmer, and a Son/Saka, and that's now the way that I have to play up until probably AFCON. It'd be too difficult for me to be bringing the Haaland back in and out, just because it's 2 transfers. So yes, so I think there are options over the next few weeks, and there's no clear cut. There's no clear cut decision, but I do think there are definitely people that I would go for over other players. I think the captaincy at the moment could be many players. So yeah, I think between Salah and Palmer at the moment, both great choices. You just got to decide, and I think we'll probably make that decision after next week, who it's going to be for game week 12. Obviously, Bukayo Saka, we haven't talked about him a lot. My viewpoint on Saka is that he is the most likely guy to keep ticking along points. He might not be as explosive as a Palmer and a Salah, but over that course of time, if you're going to want to have a guy who's going to score points against the big teams, the small teams, medium teams, Saka is just so crucial to the way Arsenal play, more so than Salah is to the way Liverpool play. Everything goes through Saka for Arsenal. If you see like Arsenal heat maps, there's just this big heat map on the right hand side, which is just Saka getting the ball and getting the ball and getting the ball, and he's on corners, he's on penalties, so he's got a lot of ways to points. He just might not be as explosive as a Salah or a Palmer. Maybe we'll just take a quick look at this captaincy table for 11 to 17. I think I've highlighted there who those key captaincy decisions could be over those game weeks. I think Haaland, Son maybe this week, potential for an Mbeumo, Foden differential, even Salah at Aston Villa maybe is slightly nicer than that. And then 12, you got Salah, Palmer, and then I think you just see from this that you've got 3 captaincy options for Salah, 3 for Palmer, and having them both in the squad means you can basically rotate their captaincies each week and get the optimal captaincy choice. And I think Saka sort of comes in there as well. You could maybe make a case for him as the optimal choice at 16, or even Son really at 16. So yeah, I think have a look at this and make your decision on who you want to go for and which captains you want to select, because I think when you're structuring your team and you're structuring your premiums, this is the most important thing to think about over the next 6-7 game weeks. Who is going to be your captains, and that's the way you should structure your team. Anyway, let's continue on with our analysis here in the midfield. A couple of other people I want to talk about from this week is Jorginho Ruta from Brighton. Now, Ruta is at 5.6 million, and nobody's talking about Ruta. And Brighton have an exceptional fixture run from game week 12 going onwards. And Ruta's been really key in their link-up play at the moment with Welbeck, with Mitoma, with the other winger. And like he's got a great physicality in there. He runs on past Welbeck. He's got great stats here: 0.3 non-penalty expected goals, 0.52 non-penalty expected assists. He's only started 7 games, but he's been starting recently all of those games, and the only thing that I could see being an issue is if João Pedro comes back and sort of finds his way into there. But other than that, let's see what happens when João Pedro comes back. I think Ruta from game week 12 onwards could be a fantastic option at 5.6 million. He could be a Morgan Rogers from game week 12 onwards. I think someone really to heavily consider if he does nail down that spot in the team. Bruno Fernandes, don't buy. Do not buy Bruno Fernandes. Someone was asking me on live stream, should you have him in? Should you bring Fernandes in now? He's like scored 3 goals in 2 games, including the Carabao Cup. Yeah, but like he scored a penalty. He's the creative talent of the team, but he just doesn't get himself I don't know. I think it's just United as well for me. Don't bring him in yet. Let's wait and see. Let's see how Amarin sets up the team. if it is that Fernandes can replicate that form from old, then maybe he becomes an option. But at 8.2 million, I just think there's so many better players with better fixtures in better form at that price point that you'd rather have. I do think Bruno Fernandes is a great player. I just think he's a terrible FPL option. Poorly priced, like poor price point, not not amazing fixtures. Like great the next three, and then after that, not so much. But I don't want to punt on him as Amorim comes in as a new manager. He's not someone I'd want to punt on for 8.2 million. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on Bruno. I'm sure it'll upset some United fans and maybe Andy. But yeah, he's definitely a do not buy for me. Forward line. Raul Jimenez still looks incredible to me. Like, really just looks incredible. He's the focal point for Fulham the same way Wood is for Nottingham Forest. He's been in great form. Fulham have got good fixtures over the next 4 games, especially from attacking perspective. And I think he's definitely somebody that I'd be interested in putting in the team. If you've got a slot for a 5.8 million and you're looking for someone, Raul Jimenez is someone I'd definitely have in. Yeah, he's that endpoint to that for the Fulham progressive carries, and his stats are just looking great, and his fixtures are looking great, and his form is looking great. So I would say tactically tick, fixtures tick, form tick, stats tick. That's 4 from 4. I think he's an excellent player for the team, and those are probably the four quick key things to consider. Wissa, again, I've spoken about him. They've got some really good fixtures coming up as well. Brentford over the next 3. I think he's got incredible footballing IQ. Even when Tony was in the team previously, he's just getting into such excellent positions, picking up last-minute winners, equalisers. I think Wissa is one of the most, I don't know if he's underrated anymore, but like underrated footballing IQ perspective, he's incredibly smart and gets into some amazing, similar to Cole Palmer, gets into some great positions that other people just don't see. His stats are slightly skewed by the fact that he hasn't played as many games as other people, so it's quite high. But I mean, realistically, he's been returning unbelievable XG in many games so far, and is playing up front for Brentford, who score goals at 6 million price point. Pretty good, and in good form. So again, probably ticking all of those 4 boxes for me is Wissa. Just I'd maybe like Brentford to score a few more goals. That's the only thing. Similar to Jimenez and Fulham. Erling Haaland, this guy. Do we love him? Do we hate him? Personally, I love him. I was really hoping he'd blank this week. So thank you, Erling. Please do it again against Brighton. I would love it. Don't think it's going to happen, but I love it. So I said we talk about Erling Haaland, and here it is. I made the substitution out of Haaland. I brought in actually Chris Wood last week, which was a great result for me, and also Palmer because I wanted to get into them before the price rises, and they both went up, and Haaland went down in price. So everything sort of worked out for me last week. I do think if you kept Haaland, do not get rid of him for game week 11. I think the way that Brighton set up with that high press, and the way that Man City play through presses, which is just their game, is going to really benefit Haaland if they can get through that press, and they're going to have to force defenders to come out, and Haaland's going to be running in behind. They're going to cause Brighton all sorts of issues defensively. It'll be really interesting to see how Hertzler sets up against Man City and what plans he has. I think he's a really smart coach, so if he comes up with something to sort of stunt Haaland whilst also keeping that front foot press and that attacking play, I think that's going to be incredible. So watch out for that game because I think that Haaland's going to score a couple of goals, but I'd love to see Brighton form a strategy to deal with it. Yeah, I know there's been less attacking threat, but I just think tactically the way the game is, I think that's going to be less of an issue than it has been in previous games. If Man City have got those technical players on the pitch like the Bernardo Silvas, the Gundogans, the Phil Fodens, this is going to be a better game for those sort of players to create those opportunities because they're technically good enough to get around that press and then get in when they're into the open space, not behind the block that a lot of teams have been setting up against them. that's where they're going to thrive. So tactically, the game for City should be good this week. So let's hope Hertzler implements something to sort of make that a bit more trickier for them. And the other guy that's on here, which as you can probably see, is a bit of a hitch from me. That is not Cunha, that is Evan Nilsson. Is who I wanted to talk about from Bournemouth. So Evan Nilsson, 5.9 mil, has been in really great form. He scored 3 goals, obviously only in 8 games, but the last few games for Bournemouth have been in really good form for them. And Bournemouth have got a good few games over the next few weeks. They got Brentford, Brighton, and Wolves, and then Tottenham, who all of those, as for an attacking team, like pretty decent. And he's getting some pretty decent expected goals, expected statistically. Um, Again, leading the line for Bournemouth. I think they're obviously slightly better at home than they are away. I think this is someone who I'd definitely say is an interesting differential pick that you go for. He's probably not the guy that I'd go for at the 5.9 mil price point. You've obviously got like a Chris Wood at 6.4, Danny Welbeck at 5.9, and Wisser and Jimenez, who we've already spoken around about that price point. But he's somebody that's interesting as differential to keep an eye on going forwards. I think he could be somebody who could come into some points over the next few game weeks. So keep an eye out for Evan Nilsson. Okay, so moving on to my final personal player pick. So having spoken about everything so far, these are the 4 guys that I'd be looking to bring in over the next few weeks. A couple as differential picks and a couple just through sheer great form or great fixtures. So Aït-Nouri, I think, as we've spoken about, has got a really good run of fixtures for Wolves. He's got great attacking stats. And attacking wise, he's got picked up 3 goals and 2 assists and is in good form going forward. So he ticks sort of 3 of the boxes out of the 4. The only one maybe is tactically, Wolves unlikely to keep clean sheets. So we'll see. The great fixtures, maybe they'll come into a little bit of ability to keep something against maybe Southampton, Fulham, or Bournemouth over the next 3. Chris Wood, again, just form for me. He's just in incredible form, and tactically, Forest have him in just he's in the perfect place for Chris Wood as a finisher, where everything's funneled towards him, and they're playing on the break and the fast sort of counter attacks. Fixtures, unfortunately, not so great over the next couple of game weeks. Then Ipswich in 13, which obviously will be a great fixture for him. So yeah, for me, I think Chris Wood is a buy if you are looking for a striker at that price point. I think he's the guy for me. I think he's just in great form for Forest, who are playing really well. Tactically, a great part of their system. Nuno's really been an excellent coach on penalties. Yeah, I think Chris Wood is a great buy. Diego Dalot, I know we talked about the possible issues with United and changing a defensive system under the new manager, Amorim, but the potential for upside there is just huge over those next 3 game weeks with Leicester, Ipswich, and Everton. If he can get flying forwards and United can manage to keep clean sheets against those teams, he could really come up with some great returns, and he could really boost your rank in some of those game weeks, considering how difficult it's been over the last 10 game weeks or so to pick defenders who have returned with either clean sheets or attacking returns, really. And the final guy on my list is Jorginho Ruta. My only concern is if João Pedro comes back into that Brighton side and picks up that spot. But otherwise, I think post that Man City game, if he's still locking down that spot, or if João Pedro comes into the team somewhere else and he's still playing, he's going to be someone I'm really looking at for that amazing Brighton fixture run from 12. I think he looks magical in there. His physicality is great. His link up's been amazing. He's been in some pretty good form. Fixtures are there from 12. Yeah, the only thing is the risk, the minutes risk from João Pedro coming in, and that price point is amazing at 5.6 million. So yeah, those are my picks guys, also please, just before I go on to that last section, if you are still watching, please like and subscribe to the channel. As a new channel, I'm really trying to grow the base, and if you enjoy this and enjoy my videos, it's really going to help me keep going in the future. Please let me know if there's any changes or different things that you want to show from me going forwards, and I will do. Um, and then, yeah, I think just maybe a couple of other things, final discussion points before we finish up. Um, will be going forwards into game week 11. Make sure you really consider your captaincy choices. I think if we just pull up their captaincies on the screen one final time, if you do have Haaland, I'd recommend keeping him going forwards. If you are looking to build a wildcard team, check out my shorts on Haaland wildcard team and without Haaland wildcard team. I think the Haaland wildcard team is surprisingly interesting, I would say. If you're looking and you think that Salah could be someone you potentially go without, you can look at some of those game weeks where you got Salah as captain. Southampton, you can pick Palmer. Everton, you can go Haaland. Tottenham maybe isn't the most amazing week. You could go Palmer again against Everton. You could go Saka against Crystal Palace. So can you go without Salah over the next 6-7 weeks? You definitely can. Can you go with Haaland over the next 6-7 weeks? You definitely can. Is game week 11 going to be the one for me that's going to be the problem? Yes, it is. So yeah, guys, really consider these choices. I think you might not have the same thoughts on what the best best games are, but I've sort of given some insights on what I think the good fixtures are for attacking. And maybe if you think slightly differently, then you might end up structuring your team slightly differently. Um, yeah, thanks again, guys. I really appreciate you tuning into the video. Once again, please like and subscribe. Really help the channel grow. Have a great week. Good luck this game week. I hope everything goes well to you. And let's hope for a green arrow going again this week. I'm hoping to pop up to higher than 673k in the world, which is where I'm sitting at the moment. Maybe even roll into that top 500k would be great. All right, guys, thanks a lot. FPL English Aussie signing out.